Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting story. It is apparently planned to go multiplayer at some point. The director said multiplayer was always in the cards, but he's attributing the fact that it is actually going to be in the game to a conversation he had with the president of South Korea. So the president of South Korea visited, I guess, the game studio and said something along the lines of, well, why don't you make it multiplayer and then add ads to billboards to generate some income? And then so the director was like, why don't I do those things? So they are planning on adding multiplayer to Inzoi at some point, and there may be the possibility that, you know, if you're walking down the street, you can see a big billboard that's advertising Coca-Cola or Reebok or whoever. Which, to be honest, I'm actually not entirely opposed to. I don't necessarily mind advertising in games if it's like that and it's not intrusive. It's kind of more subtle, you know, like it is on a billboard. Like you have a billboard in the game, just throw it up on the billboard. That said, I do kind of enjoy a lot of the kind of Easter eggs that games would traditionally do if they were doing something like that, like the old Resident Evils having Cho Cola, you know, where they're just kind of like, okay, we're just gonna make jabs at real brands or, you know, put really goofy stuff up there. But if you're gonna put advertising in the game, do it that way where it feels naturally, like it's playing on a TV in the background, you know, not in my load screens or whatever, or forced to load screens. But anyway, yeah, it is going to be adding multiplayer. It doesn't look like we know when. You know, they just said we want to do it, but they didn't say when they're going to do it. But as we know, Inzoi has had a pretty rough. It did have a pretty rough launch. You know, it launched and it looks really pretty, but it does feel very kind of hollow. I wouldn't even say necessarily shallow, maybe a little shallow, but you know, mostly for me, it just felt kind of hollow. You know, people just kind of walk around and they do things, but they don't feel like they have those inner lives in the same way Sims do. You know, where they're like freaking out over little things, or they're just kind of like walking up to each other and start dancing or whatever. But they have had two updates which have been received fairly well. The first one was Island Getaway, which added a whole new city. It allows you to travel from one city to another. It added a lot of water sports kind of things, you know, swimming, fishing. It added farming. It added mining. You could set up your own market stand and that sort of thing. New vehicles. So that one, when it dropped, I haven't played since launch, but I do know that when that launched, a lot of people did think it was a move in the right direction. They did think that it helped quite a bit. And then more recently, Inzoi has had their Halloween update where they've added some new outfits and they have added some new activities like pumpkin carving and trick or treating and funerals. And it allows you to play as a ghost. So, you know, you had ghosts in The Sims for a long time and now you have ghosts in Inzoi and you can play as a ghost. So you can run around and scare people and whatnot. And then they also added some various gameplay tweaks and some new interactions. So they are updating the game. It still has a long way to go. It seems like most people's problem with it is they're kind of lamenting the lack of more simulation content, particularly in those social interactions, particularly in those social interactions. So like I said, you know, like when I was playing, you had the guy and he took the kids to the park and they played there's the basketball thing and you can click on it and he can kind of shoot hoops, but he can't play with them. It's like they could each play in different courts and just kind of shoot. They wouldn't. So yeah, that lack of interaction and allowing people to kind of do things together. I think for me, that was the biggest one, you know, like, oh, okay, if I click on, like if you're doing something like The Sims, you know, you click on a guitar and the guy starts playing the guitar and other guys will walk through and they'll put money in the jar. And some people might come up and they start dancing and other people come up and they're chatting about what's going on and, you know, they're dancing and chatting. And it feels very social, but here it's just kind of like, oh, you know, it's one character and they're kind of interacting with this thing and everybody else is kind of walking around doing their own thing. They're not interacting with each other. That was kind of my concern. It says that they're adding more interactions and that sort of thing with like toddlers and whatnot. So hopefully with those new interactions, it will feel more social. Now, we do know on the Sims 5 side that Sims 5 is not coming. They're not making a Sims 5. However, Project Renee is supposed to have multiplayer. So, you know, who's gonna get there first? Is it gonna be Project Renee or is it gonna be Inzoi is gonna be adding it to it? Who knows? Now, on the other side, with Sims, we do know that there are rumors of Sims 4 remastered. So supposedly they're going to remaster Sims 4, and with that they're going to be adding, it's going to be using a new engine, so it's going to look a little bit prettier, but they're also going to be opening up the neighborhoods so you can actually walk around a bit more like in Sims 3. So that's really exciting, but no idea when that's coming out. So until then, just keep up with what's going on, I guess. So Inzoi adding multiplayer, but we don't know when.